You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, and I'm joined this week by John Stevenson in Tennessee. John, how's it going?
It is going pretty well.
And then also Shane Joseph up in New York. Shane, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Andrew. Thanks for asking.
Well, guys, I wanted to get you both on the podcast this week because you're two of the most opinionated people I know. And that's a really good
right.
That's a good thing in this sense. I
was going to say, I don't know how to take that, but all right.
You have lots of thoughts. That's what we're going to go with anyway.
Sure.
But,
okay.
Here's an awkward segue. I feel a lot like Keanu Reeves. You want to know why? Because we're talking replacements this week. Obviously, there's a lot of news going on. If you've been following anywhere on the internet that's not our website, because we haven't posted about it, Primeval Whirl is starting to be deconstructed. It's not being deconstructed very carefully. It looks like they're just going in there with heavy machinery and tearing the track out piece by piece. Not even piece by piece. They're just tearing it down at one fell swoop.
Dueling Dragons style.
Yes,
Yep.
Dueling Dragon style. It was announced last week that Shrek 4D at Universal Studios Florida is closing after the holiday season and to make way for something else. And if you are on the subset of theme park TikTok, which I don't know if you guys are or not, it's a pretty wild west.
Yeah, it is. I'm on there. It can get pretty crazy.
It's nuts. But there's the constant rumor that Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith the contract is up. I don't know who has access to these legal documents that says when Steven Tyler has to hang it up with his super stretch limo, but that's always a constant rumor. So we thought this week on the podcast, we would kind of go through each of those three attractions / areas with Dinosaur at Disney's Animal Kingdom and just kind of talk about things we would like to see or what we think might happen. Just real quick discussion on these attractions and kind of what we feel the future should be for them. But before we get into the future, I do want to talk to you guys about, your thoughts on the current attractions. And I will start with Primeval Whirl and the greater Dino Land USA area. What do you guys think of that specific area in Animal Kingdom? I think personally for me, it's a little tired. Dinosaur is a great attraction, or Countdown to Extinction as I will forever call it. But what do you guys think of Dino Land USA, kind of the greater area? And John, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, so I was there back last October, and of course Primeval Whirl had already closed. So it was a very just sad area, and with the capacity limited, there were especially not a lot of people there. It's already kind of a ghost town of sorts, and so especially now that it's lost one of its staple attractions, it was kind of like it was like a deserted roadside attraction, which I know is kind of the vibe that they are going for. So mission accomplished there. I like Dinosaur. It was my first, having ridden Indiana Jones at Disneyland now, I realize how inferior it is. But I think it's a fun ride. It's always bugged me how they are just so... The roadside attraction side is such a contrast to the dinosaur side, and I know that's kind of part of the story, but it's always seemed like a very disjointed area of Animal Kingdom. So it's whatever they do with it, its current form, I don't think is going to be missed that much.
Yeah, I agree. I have never actually ridden Primeval Whirl because it's been closed. When I went last time in 2019, I don't mind the area as much. I mean, it definitely does not fit with the other themes of Animal Kingdom. And yeah, I think that making a land look run down on purpose is, they've achieved the theme, but it doesn't really look great once you're actually in there. I do really like the dinosaur attraction, though. I would be sad if that left, but there are a few other things that I would be happy replacing it, but I just hope that they keep that ride system at least, because I think that's really great and it fits with the park well.
Yeah, I think Primeval Whirl, both sides of the coaster. And for those who don't know, it is a spinning wild mouse style roller coaster from Reverchon, I believe is how you pronounce that, or Reverchon, one of those words. Spinning wild mouse. It was unique because it had two tracks that were kind of side by side, very cool. I was fortunate enough to ride on both sides, so I got both the credits for you credit counting nerds out there. Um, but I'm not a big spinning coaster person. Obviously, I think the more roller coasters in any park, the better. But kind of like John said, I don't know if it really fit the overall theme. Animal Kingdom is such a beautiful park, and you have, the so much attention to detail. And I know the theme of Chester and Hester's Dino-Rama is roadside carnival, kind of this south of the border esque, just terrible place to be. But it just happens to have a spinning ride and some carnival games and or two roller coasters. And then you kind of tuck back around into you've got the excavation site playground and the Restaurantosaurus and all these other things. For what it is, I don't think it lives up to the rest of Animal Kingdom, and this is going to get us blacklisted from ever attending a Disney event ever. But I think if with Primeval World going away, I do think it needs some fresh life in there. And Shane, I will start with you. If you had to replace Dino Land USA as a whole, what would you put into that area?
So I would put in what I would put in here, as I think been fairly well documented on this podcast and our website. I would love for a Black Panther attraction to go in that land and it to be themed to Wakanda. But as we were just briefly discussing before the show, not sure if that's actually a possibility because of the Disney Universal Marvel theme park rights contract. It's a little bit vague on exactly what can be used, but it doesn't sound like Black Panther would be included in that, which is unfortunate. However, if it could be used, I would love a dark ride themed to Black Panther to go into that land. But a lot of people have brought up that it doesn't really fit with the theme of Animal Kingdom. I think Joe Rohde also said something about it, where Animal Kingdom is very much about celebrating nature and conservation, which is briefly touched on, at least in the Black Panther movies, but maybe won't fit as well as, some other things that we can discuss here. But I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think Black Panther, in a perfect world, yes, that would more so from an environment standpoint and just the thematics of it, I think would fit well into the fabric of Animal Kingdom. I do agree. I agree with Joe Rohde, and I just don't know. Licensing and agreements aside, I don't know if it would really fit as well as I wish it would fit in Animal Kingdom. And I actually have changed my mind since we were discussing prior to the show. I actually think, and again, this would be a bit of a stretch as well, but I think with the success of Secret Life of Pets at Universal Studios Hollywood, I'd really like to see an area or at least a dark ride themed to Zootopia. I love that movie. I think obviously Zootopia, it's, fits well with the theme of Animal Kingdom, and I know Disney would not want people, to, I guess, broadcast the fact that Animal Kingdom is a zoo, but you do have all the animals, so it'd obviously be a very much more family oriented, or even I thought Zootopia was hilarious, so I think it would definitely be have enough appeal for all ages, but I think it would be a good kind of replacement for a kid friendly area, or more colorful, a little less serious. But I understand that there would be, with the same line as what Joe Rohde was saying, there are the same issues with I think what would be a Zootopia land or attraction. But that I would just like to see that franchise be brought to life in a park.
Yeah, they've got the quote unquote blueprint. I know they're building a Zootopia land right now in Shanghai Disneyland, scheduled to debut sometime in the future. I don't know the exact date anymore. COVID kind of just threw a wrench into every calendar out there. But I know, we were talking a little bit before the show, as you mentioned, and I really liked your idea that you kind of pivoted from, which was having a Lion King esque land in the park, and you can move the Festival of the Lion King show there. You could come up with some sort of wildebeest run coaster or fast moving dark ride or something like that. I think Lion King would be really cool. One thing I really would like to see that I don't think we will get any further on is kind of that original concept of Disney's Animal Kingdom, the extra land, which I think eventually became Pandora, which was Beastly Kingdom. Kind of playing on the mythical dragons and things like that. Almost a Lost Continent esque area at Animal Kingdom. And it's, John, like you mentioned, it's kind of like it's a lighter hearted, less about conservation and more about dragons. And it's, to me, is like a Busch Gardens Land of the Dragons meets Lost Continent, but on steroids. You have Merlin's Castle or whatever you want to have in there. Whoever has that IP right now, that might be public domain. Who knows? But I think I would love to see a Beastly Kingdom land in there. But I think with Disney's focus on IP, as evidenced by a lot of the things ongoing with the 50th anniversary, with Kite Tales and Harmonious and things like that, I think if it's not tied to IP, we won't see it. And unfortunately, I don't think Pete's Dragon is enough of a relevant enough IP to build any new attractions around.
That is probably true, but last year Disney did just put out Raya and the Last Dragon animated movie, so I think there still is a possibility that dragons could find their way into Animal Kingdom, maybe through that at some point as well.
That would be good. Yeah, this is Shane. This is why we keep you around, because you've got your finger on the hot button of pop culture and new movies, and I'm again just name dropping the most obscure Disney film of all time, Pete's Dragon, in the year 2021.
It is. It's also. I wanted to bring up. I don't know if this is actually like something that existed in blueprint form or if it was just concept art, but there was supposed to be at some point a wooden coaster in that land themed to dinosaur like dig, like paleontology. So that I also think would be cool. It would be nice to have a wooden coaster at Disney, and I think that if they want to stick to the dinosaur brand still, you could loop that in at least somewhat through that, but they don't have a lot of space there. So if they were going to do that, they would probably have to do some creative construction with it. But I still think that if they wanted to resurrect that idea, that would be a good fit for that area also.
I think if on the subject of a coaster, and if we really want to get deep in the weeds with IP and, a land that may or may not have a lot of animal tie-in, I know that Dinosaur and Indiana Jones Adventure at Disneyland, same ride system, I think may even be a very similar track layout. I'm not entirely sure. One of you guys probably knows the answer to that. But I think you could gut Dinosaur, you could turn it into the East Coast Indiana Jones. You could build a clone of the Indiana Jones et le Temple du Peril, which is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Peril for the English speakers listening. But it's that Intamin roller coaster that's kind of like, it's got a loop. It was originally opened in 1993, so it would be very funny to build a clone roller coaster that's 30 years old at this point. But that's another idea. We're just spitballing blue sky in here. I think there's no wrong answers. Fortunately,
I would love to see Indiana Jones, and it is this at least very similar layout. I don't know if it's the exact same, but I know that it's almost identical. But there's already an Indiana Jones attraction in Hollywood Studios with the stunt show, which we also just learned is coming back in December. But I would love to see more Indiana Jones at Walt Disney World. So any amount of that, I will definitely take.
Gotcha. I love it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the new Indiana Jones movie, which I forget what year that's coming out.
Yes.
But I think the success of it might dictate how much more of the franchise we see in the parks.
There's another Indiana Jones movie.
Yes, coming out next summer with Harrison Ford, which is great. Steven Spielberg, unfortunately, not coming back as director, but they do have the director of Logan and Ford versus Ferrari, both great movies. So I have great faith in this movie.
Shane, again, this is why we keep you
Yeah,
around, and
see,
I love it. This is great. I want to talk about another property that, had multiple sequels and might be a tad dated at this time. See, that was a good segue.
that was a good
But
one. That was natural.
last week, Universal Studios Florida it got leaked on Twitter, and then they announced the closing of Shrek 4D. And John, I know you're a huge Shrek fan. You're shaking your head right now. It's fine. I know you didn't really get to experience Shrek 4D during any of your trips to Universal. Any reason why, or was it just one of those ran out of time, seen every 4D theater you can watch? Like, why did you never experience Shrek 4D, John?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been to Universal Studios twice, 2 or 3 times, and yeah, it was just for whatever reason. I mean, I enjoyed the Shrek films. I wouldn't say I'm a super fan of them, but for whatever, I've been on Minions. I went on the Jimmy Fallon ride, which don't get me started on that. When I'm looking back, I'm like, why did
Oh,
I
I
not
love
go
that
on
ride.
Shrek?
We'll do a debate on that one day.
Okay. So yeah, it was unexpected. I honestly did not know it was still there. So you can see how closely I've been following it. But yeah, it seems to be a well-liked attraction. So it'll be interesting to see what they have planned for it next.
Shane, did you ever ride it?
Yes, I did. I wrote it back in 2013 when I was there, so I don't remember it that well. I did not ride it when I was there a couple months ago, just because I'd already been on it. But I have been on the sort of new and improved version in Hollywood, where they have the Kung Fu Panda attraction, which is a little more than a 4D film because there's a lot of projection mapping and stuff like that involved. So I would love to see, I would be perfectly happy if they just decided to replace Shrek with the Kung Fu Panda experience. But I don't know. Do you guys have any other ideas that you would like to see go in that area?
Well, I did ride Kung Fu Panda back in August when I was there, and really did enjoy it. I really like the projection mapping. So yeah, I think if that was something that I don't know if they're still making those films or like what the staying power. I think that's a little bit after my time. I think I saw the first one and enjoyed it. So I could definitely see them doing that. Obviously, I think that space is geared toward some sort of theater type attraction. So I think it's just a matter of figuring out which IP is going to bring in the most money. Honestly, at the end of the day, now I would absolutely love to see a copy of Secret Life of Pets. That ride was adorable and amazing, and I definitely think the East Coast deserves its own version.
Yeah, I definitely, when this was announced today, the first thing I thought of was Secret Life of Pets. Being the nerd that I am, went on Google Maps, found the footprint of Secret Life of Pets, which I have no idea if it's accurate or not, if they rebuilt the building or whatever for that attraction. But I went in and I wanted to see if it fit in that space where Shrek 4D currently is. And if you get rid of what I believe is the Hello Kitty store, you can wedge it right in there. It fits for the most part. You got to turn the bill. You got to flip it a little bit, but it does fit. And listening, John, to you and Eric kind of talk about Shane, I think you're on that podcast too,
Yep.
about the Secret Life of Pets attraction, and it was a good attraction, and definitely I think it's a really kind of a good next gen type of attraction. If I told you guys that Kung Fu Panda, all three of the Kung Fu Pandas, I think there's only three, were in the top 50 grossing animated movies of all time, would that be something you'd believe? Because that's the truth, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah, I definitely would believe it. I think those movies are great. I don't think I've seen the most recent ones, but I definitely have seen the first two a few times. And I definitely think that it still has staying power. Those are kind of talked about a lot when it comes to animated movies, specifically DreamWorks movies, now that Universal owns the rights to DreamWorks. So I think that would be a great fit. I was also the first thing I thought of. It's interesting that you went to Secret Life of Pets because the first thing I thought of was Nintendo. Now that
Mm.
Universal is putting Nintendo in Hollywood and in their overseas parks, I think that if they wanted to stick with the 4D show, a Nintendo property could be interesting to sort of put in there, even if it's temporarily, just to get people invested in seeing Nintendo stuff at the Universal parks, because I know that there's a possibility it could go into Epic Universe or replace the Kid Zone area at Universal Studios Florida. So I would be interested to see, now that they have a new Mario movie coming out, if they decide to use that. And if they do, this would be the fourth major resort attraction that Chris Pratt would be featured in. So that's got to be some kind of record there also. But I don't know. You guys think that they would use Nintendo this early?
I think the key there is the success of the Illumination animated movie. That, say what you want about the cast with Chris Pratt as Mario and Jack Black as Donkey Kong. I think it's going to be a hilarious movie. It has the potential to be really good, especially for an animated movie. But I think, yeah, Shane, when you brought that up, it kind of got me thinking about, Illumination obviously did all the Minions, they did that Grinch film.
Oh yeah.
So I think the Mario play is something good there. I don't know if they want to kind of delineate the Mario property from, what's going to go in at Epic Universe or Hollywood or wherever with the full scale land. But I think that's definitely a definite possibility. I'm looking at these other Illumination properties and DreamWorks properties here. Properties like Minions and Madagascar and Boss Baby and all these other things. And I don't know if they would actually make for a really good, I say this having not seen these films, and I know they're getting ready to do a whole How to Train Your Dragon Land at Epic Universe, or at least was rumored to do that. But I think the Mario play could be good. I think it is important that whatever they build in this space is kind of an attraction that can be experienced by everybody, just like Shrek 4D. You sit in those chairs, you've got your 4D theater that moves, and I can't even remember what happens. I'm going to have to go on Netflix and watch the Shrek 4D film. So
Yeah, they do. It is on Netflix.
it's whatever. If you really, really miss Shrek 4D, it is on Netflix. It's called like Shrek and the Ghost of Lord Farquaad or something. Just go check
Yeah,
that
it's
out.
one of the short films. But I also wanted to bring up, and which is pretty much the opposite of what you just said, which is that it could be something that would be experienced by everybody. Do you think they would go the other direction and do something like the Walking Dead walkthrough haunt? Because Halloween Horror Nights has just become so popular. They've extended. I mean, it starts basically September 1st at this point. So with Universal having the rights to a lot of popular horror movies at the moment, like The Purge or the Halloween movies. Is there a chance at all that this would be a year-long walkthrough attraction because of how popular Halloween Horror Nights has become?
I read an article, and I think it was Alicia Stella, Orlando Park Stop. She mentioned there could be a walkthrough attraction that was actually themed to the villain. It's like Villain Co. or something in the Minions franchise, so where guests could walk around and they could try goofy villain weapons and things like that. I think you've got a better shot of that happening than
That's a good point.
a full on walkthrough haunt that's available year round. Obviously, Horror Nights fans are very protective of Horror Nights, and not to say that it dilutes it, but if you have a haunt year round, what does that say to the properties that aren't year round? Are they not good enough? You got to staff it. You got to make sure it's on 365 days a year, as opposed to select nights between September 1 and October 31st. I think if it's a walkthrough, it could be. I personally, what I would love to see, what I know will never happen, I want to see that roller coaster from Despicable Me at Super Silly Funland, the crazy wooden
Yes.
coaster.
Yep.
That will never happen.
At least the simulator of it would be nice.
You can't get the credit on a simulator, Shane.
You know what? That's true.
John, any other thoughts before we move on to the most speculative of speculative, talking about what's going to replace a currently open attraction?
No, as long as it is not another Jimmy Fallon ride, I will be A-okay.
What do you have against the Uptown Girls or the Ragtime Girls?
Let's save that for another episode. Let's save that.
All right. Fair enough. All right, so we're going to go back over to Walt Disney World. And again, the theme park TikTok last week or 2 weeks ago at this point was ablaze with rumors because the giant guitar in front of Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith was under construction scrims and tarps. And I have no idea if it's reopened yet. I haven't seen any pictures of this.
I was just going to ask.
Since these TikToks. I have no idea, but the rumors are ever present that Aerosmith is on the way out. And I feel like these rumors have existed for years and nothing's actually happened. But for 20 plus years now, obviously, Rock and Roller Coaster has been a standout attraction at Hollywood Studios, even back dating to when it was MGM almost. I feel like the timing works in that favor. But if Disney were to replace, if they were to retheme it or replace the coaster, what do you guys think would be a really good replacement for Aerosmith? I love Aerosmith. I love the themed trains. I love the train audio. I think it's a really cool story. I don't know if it meets with current Disney IP-ification. I think that just made up that term. But John, I'll start with you. What's a property you think would fit well, or an attraction that would fit well in that space?
I mean, your first thought is, of course, going to go to Marvel. I mean, something, but I know they're obviously so limited with that agreement. And then you've got a Guardians coaster coming to Epcot. And so I think that would be a little bit, I think that would be too much Guardians, as much as I like the franchise. And they better not touch Tower of Terror. I have to say that. That ride is iconic and timeless and should be absolutely left untouched, as much as I love Guardians at California Adventure. So I was thinking, and so, you're running through, okay, what Marvel character could they possibly use? But then you think, it would have to be one that's relatively well known. So I was thinking, I wonder if they would just, have it, give it a facelift and maybe go with a different band or a different artist. And I don't know if, or expand it to not just one singular music act, but do something a little bit in the same vein as Rip Ride Rocket, where you have different types of music. I think, they're just so IP driven now that almost every new attraction that Disney opens is tied to an IP. So I'm not sure what exactly that would be and who that would be. And obviously, whatever artist they use would have to have some staying power. But I think the ride as is so iconic, and maybe they would be able to keep it as Rock and Roller Coaster, but featuring somebody else or some other, make it less focused on one, completely redo the concept, but keep the music kind of at its core. And I know rock music isn't as popular today as it, I think, may have been back in the early 2000s, but I think music is going to be something. There's always obviously going to be music, and there's going to be popular music. And so if there was a way to keep the idea or the central theme of music and keep the Rock and Roller Coaster brand there, I think that might be an option. Might just need a refresh and a new band to get in the limo with.
Before we go on, you did mention Marvel, and I've done a little bit of digging, and I want to read just the basic Wikipedia paragraph of this 1994 contract. And it says, the 1994 agreement between Marvel Entertainment and Comcast / NBC Universal's current parent companies, governs the use of Marvel properties in non-Universal theme parks and dictates what parks in the region can use such properties. Currently, Islands of Adventure uses the Avengers, Spider-Man, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four, while Universal Studios Japan only employs Spider-Man, as it has operated the Islands of Adventure clone ride, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, since 2004. The contract forbids Walt Disney World and the Tokyo Disney Resort from installing these characters, as well as other characters in the same, quote, family, i.e., any team members, side characters, and villains closely associated with the specific superheroes. In addition, Disney is not allowed to use the Marvel name in all of the US and Japan, nor create a Marvel-themed simulator ride within the legal designated regional distances of any Universal theme park in the US and Japan, regardless of whether the Marvel character is being used by Comcast, NBC, and Universal. So, as it stands there, I'm not a super expert on the Marvel Cinematic Universe or Marvel comic books in general. But right now it feels to me like your options at a Marvel retheme of Rock and Roller Coaster are Groot, and that's it. So, Shane, what about you? What do you think?
So I think that I agree with your point about IP. So that's why, especially where it's located right now, I think Cars would be a great IP to put on the coaster. There is the Cars Lightning McQueen show currently right next door to Rock and Roller Coaster. So if they wanted to go with a racing theme, I think Cars would be a great fit. But the ride is a bit more thrilling, so I'm sure that the ride at California Adventure is much more suited to families and kids who are into the Cars movies. Rock and Roller Coaster is pretty intense when it comes to Disney rides, so I'm not sure they'd go that route. I think Wreck-It Ralph would also fit into that sort of animated racing environment. But I also think that The Incredibles would be another option if they wanted to go again with the animated route. They already have the Incredicoaster in California, so they could even keep the same name if they wanted to, go Six Flags with it and just put the same name on a different coaster. But I think that at least would lend itself maybe a little bit better to the theming, because when I think of Cars, I think of, the ride at California, fairly slow moving, very scenic ride, whereas Rock and Roller Coaster is really fast paced, which I think would fit with the Incredibles. That way they could get the superhero theme and the Disney animation theme in the same attraction. So I think that if I were to make a guess, I would say another Incredicoaster would be a perfect fit for that ride.
Yeah.
And John, going back to what you said about a new music artist, it's got me now thinking about, I think one of the rumors, again, speculation, I haven't seen any of this stuff, is that Aerosmith's music catalog is going to the Universal Music Group. I think they bought the rights to all of Aerosmith's music, and Disney would have to get into negotiations with Universal. This is all a lot of legal jargon that I don't necessarily even really want to dig into. And I know my buddy Clint, he's like a diehard podcast listener to this. He is a lawyer. He will yell at me after the fact and be like, here's what you need to actually know about this contract. So I'm looking forward to that one.
We should have had him on as a guest. He could have gone through the contracts and gave us a little more info.
But then we would have had to pay him, and it's just like a whole different thing. But I think if we're really gonna retheme Rock and Roller Coaster, I think you can do it with a Disney IP. And I'm gonna lose Shane here because I'm pretty sure this movie came out before he was born. It is A Goofy Movie, which, if you are unfamiliar, when this podcast ends, fire up Disney Plus, go watch A Goofy Movie. It is one of the most underrated Disney animated films of all time. It has an incredible soundtrack, and the main storyline basically is that Goofy and his son Max are, it's summer. Max wants to, find romance with this girl. His dad wants to go on a bonding adventure, and it centers around this musical artist named Powerline. And Powerline is played by Tevin Campbell. Two really, really good songs that still hold up, 25 years later or however long it is. But I think you could retheme it, would still kind of play into that Hollywood Boulevard theme, because Goofy and Max drive cross country and Goofy's beat up car with all this comically large packing on top of it. When this was like being speculated a couple weeks ago, I built the whole ride in my head. It starts with a scene that's on the open road, and then the pre-show is Lester's Possum Park, which, again, Shane, you're looking at me like I'm a crazy person, but it's
well, you know what, Andrew? I don't know if we see eye to eye on this issue, because A Goofy Movie was the first thing I watched when I got Disney Plus. So while it did not come out, it did come out before I was born, but I am a fan of the movie, so I am on board with this idea.
Well, I think this would become a standout attraction at Walt Disney World. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
The other thing I saw, and I can't take credit for this, I saw this on Twitter, and I cannot remember who said it. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, that was my idea, it probably was. I just don't know who you were, and I'm sorry. Right now, the Muppets 4D, 3D, 4D attraction at Hollywood Studios still remains a timeless classic. It was the last Muppets film that Jim Henson worked on. I think another way you could do this, and this to me is just a very simple overlay. Instead of the video with Steven Tyler, you replace Aerosmith with Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. You keep the storyline the exact same. It's like, hey, Zoot, give him some backstage passes. And then you go to the limo and it plays Can You Picture That? It wouldn't be the only roller coaster in Orlando that plays Can You Picture That? But maybe you could get that off of Hollywood Rip Ride and Rocket. I think if you just, and then you show up at Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem's concert and you get into the brake run and Animal is just doing a crazy drum solo, I think that would be a fantastic ride. I think the parks always need more Muppets. I think with the Muppet Haunted Mansion, I don't want to see a Haunted Mansion overlay, but I do want Disney to continue to, use the Muppets in new and exciting ways, and a Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem roller coaster would be a great way to do that. The third option for me, and this is just if you want to gut the building completely, build the Monsters, Inc. door coaster that has been rumored on the internet
on
for
my list.
20 years.
Yep.
Build it. Suspended family coaster. Make the cars look like doors. Indoors, you theme it, you put screens, you do what you got to do. Disney, these are all really solid ideas, but right now the best one clearly is Powerline and A Goofy Movie. And after today, we'll learn a little bit more about what's going to happen. Sorry, that was really forced.
That was pretty forced. But something else that I just thought of, kind of thinking what Disney has coming up, at least that's been announced so far, is they have the Buzz Lightyear prequel movie about the astronaut that inspired the Buzz Lightyear toy. So I'm just thinking the launch system could be, some sort of rocket launch situation, because, they already have Toy Story in that park, but if they wanted to do something outside of the land, they could put something in that building too.
I don't know how the layout of I'm going to look at the park layout on Google Maps right now. Could you kind of retcon the park map like they did with Midway Mania?
No, those are pretty far away.
Okay.
To really connect, but I don't know. Maybe there's some I'm trying to picture what's in between those two. But
I got it right now. Hang on one second. It is so we've got Rock and Roller Coaster. Yeah, it's very far. It's like in the complete.
I don't think there's any real way to do it, but.
Yeah, but I mean, you think you have Star Tours and then obviously Galaxy's Edge, which are in completely different leagues.
Yeah.
But if they wanted to do that, I don't think they're going to let the location stop them.
Yeah, it's true.
That's what I think.
It's a good point.
I think it's another issue. I think, Shane, as you were saying, I think that it is probably, besides Mission Space, one of the most intense rides at Walt Disney World. So I think whatever they go with, it's going to have to be a little bit older skewed in its appeal. So,
wait, you don't want a Doc McStuffins roller coaster?
I mean, I'd ride it, but I'm just thinking about that 5-year-old that might be a little misguided, thinking that. Yeah,
I think Nick and Kyle's kids would ride it, so that's fine. I mean, whatever. Any other thoughts, comments, concerns about how we're going to replace these attractions, and what's I guess we should include a disclaimer. These are solely our thoughts. We're not reading rumor sheets and trying to build off of other people's things. These are things that we've kind of come up with. We're just having fun with this. If you're Disney or Universal, please don't sue us or come after us for just speculating about your attractions. But anything else from you guys?
No, I mean, well, if Disney Universal is listening and wanted to hire us to help build the new rides, that's fine with me too. So that could be an option.
Shane's LinkedIn we'll put in the show notes.
Yeah, perfect. Somebody hire me, please.
But that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster 101 podcast. As always, make sure you're following us on social media. We are at Coaster 101 wherever you consume social media. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook when it's working, TikTok, YouTube, all those places. We also have a website, coaster101.com. A lot of really good articles coming down the pipe. Obviously, it's Halloween season. John's going to a park this coming weekend, which is now in the past. Shane's going to a park. I'm going to a park. There's going to be great content coming down the pipeline at coaster101.com. As always, if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you're liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing, and doing all of those other podcast buzzwords to help other people find us. We love 5-star reviews on iTunes. We love reading them. I mean, if you have an actual review, right now our favorite review comes from past guests of the show and noted Shrek fan Carly Wiesel's mother. And she reviewed it because Carly filled in for Shane on one of our episodes, and she became the new Shane. And we're glad to have Shane back, but we also need more reviews that aren't Carly's mom, with no offense to Carly's mom whatsoever. So go on iTunes, give us a review, a rating. It helps other people find us, helps us keep creating really good content. So we really appreciate that. If you want to interact with the show, feel free to send us an email, podcast@coaster101.com. Thanks as always to JM Music Design for our theme music, and for John and Shane, I am Andrew, and we will talk to y'all again next week. See ya.